I'm in my my bat cave here.
So where are you? So I see the that speaks to our hearts. I don't know if you're in Cincinnati or Northern Kentucky, but that looks like walls of buildings that I've rehabbed a ton. Where the heck are you?
I'm in Lexington,
Really?
Kentucky. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah. So
man.
I was in Cincinnati
Is
for
that an old
10 years.
distillery, an old brewery, or something? Or
I
okay,
don't know what it is. It had to be like a warehouse space or something. It's a Gray Line Station. It's a beautiful space. They've done a great job rehabbing it. Tons of community kind of access downstairs, and then there's an office suite upstairs with I think 5-6 offices. And it came available. I was looking for office space all over Lexington, and it was like drop ceilings and carpet were the two non-negotiables with every single space that I looked at. And it was just so happened to be the two things I didn't want, and it was pretty much an impossible task.
when you walked those office buildings and you saw those acoustical drop ceilings, 8-foot ceilings, right?
Yeah.
And then you saw old 1980s, 90s, and 2000s carpet and old gold fixtures, all these things. And you saw that time after time after time. You didn't want it. You wanted contemporary space, open ceiling space. You wanted probably group settings. That's the things that you wanted.
Yeah.
Why do you think, if you know that and I know it, so I've started to do that with some of my office buildings, and I just want a pretty good tenant by showing them a space like that up against some of the biggest developers in town. And I'm just like, man, I'm just listening to people. Why do you think so many of these buildings around town just continue to try to give us the same product? What is that about us?
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like in Lexington, there's a pretty specific demographic. I mean, it's definitely kind of quickly changing. And I've only been here for a little bit, right? Like where I spent my entire life coming to Lexington, but actually living here, kind of one of my prerequisites, I was like, man, I'm going to get a cheap apartment. I actually just ran out of time. I was like, I'm just going to get an apartment. I found one. I picked it that day. I was like, done. I'm not looking around. I don't even know where I want to live, right? So I'm relatively familiar with the heartbeat of Lexington in terms of business and the community, beyond just horses. I think it's a changing of the seasons. It's like winds from the east. I think that business as usual has kind of just gone on, and especially small town America. And it takes some real effort to kind of strip those things away. You've got a lot of traditional businesses down here, that are run by older men and women that I don't think do prioritize those things, or maybe don't even know about them. Like, I love the idea or the phrase, you don't know what you don't know until you realize you don't know it. And maybe people don't realize that, man, there is a better way, like how your office environment impacts the way that you feel about your work and the energy that space can actually bring to you. Because they've always worked in carpeted, drop ceilinged, kind of cubicle type businesses, right?
You just brought up about Lexington and, just some of the traditional businesses. And this probably applies across the country, right? As you're getting into this season of true, like business operator and partnering, and because you've had entrepreneurship at your heart since like second grade, right, man? Like you guys, you and your partner, I read about your partner, like he's been talking about the partner in Commonwealth. And you guys have this spirit. I think you met it in Western Michigan?
No, so funny enough, Brian and my sister were best friends growing up. They were 8 years older than I was. So when they took off for college, I think I was in 4th grade. And, Brian always jokes I was a little brother that he wasn't allowed to like swear around. And, I hadn't seen Brian. I think I ran into him a couple years before founding Commonwealth. I think we ran into each other in our hometown, like Barnes and Noble. We were all home for the holidays. But other than that, I hadn't seen him since 4th grade, and he reached out to me on Instagram about the business.
So what did the horse industry, right? So you're all in, man. Like there is no doubt it's your passion, and we can talk about your guys' business, Commonwealth Sports. It started with horses, and now it's golfers and all sorts of stuff you're getting into. But what about the horse industry? Like where'd that passion come from?
Yeah, it's hard to say. I think it's a God-given thing, honestly. When I was 4 years old, I asked my mom for riding lessons. I said, I want to ride horses, and she made it happen. And I tell people, every year from that moment forward was just an escalation of commitment. It was like, I played travel basketball, soccer, tennis. And, I loved tennis, but soccer and basketball, I could kind of take or leave. My family was, big into athletics. My dad was a great athlete. My sister was a great athlete. So it was just, I'm 6'3", so, and always was an athletic guy, but I just didn't care about them. Like, I didn't, I look back, I didn't practice those sports. Horses, I would leave school early if I could. And from the time that I was 11 years old until all the way through college, I worked at the barn. I mean, every day. There were times when I was a kid, my mom would try to drag me out of the barn. Like, and I was working, I was driving tractors, doing chores. I was 12 years old doing chores until like 8 p.m. Mom's like, you got to go home and do homework. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know. So it's definitely a, like a God-given passion. And, I think to answer your question, why horses, it's so much more than the activity that you see it for, right? So a lot of people think like, oh, riding the horses, right? Or in our case, racing the horses. I've obviously done both. Um, what's different about it is that the connections that you make. I have met so many incredible people through horses. They have taken me around the world. I've met captains of industry. I mean, we're talking CEOs of Fortune 500 companies, inventors, um, personalities, celebrities, all because of horses, not because of who I am, not because of anything I had done, but because horses bring so many different types of people together. And the coolest thing too is I have sat at so many tables where I'm sitting next to a billionaire and a guy that cleans stalls for, back in the day, like $10 an hour, he doesn't have any kind of education, maybe a guy that can't even speak English hardly. And horses brought us to the same table, and they create this level set where nobody thinks about our differences. They're just like, man, we're sharing in this experience and we're having a great time.
So what have you learned sitting around those tables? So when you're sitting at the table, is there something that you've garnered from, we call them successful people? I try not to tie the amount of money you have or the money you've acquired to success, right? Because you could be successful at anything. And if you're, what have you garnered from sitting at the tables with those people though? When you said the titans of industry, what have you garnered from them? Are there some shared characteristics, some shared perspectives?
Yeah, I think so. At least the people that have left an impact on me, I think there's plenty of people that have been, you know, well, to your point, monetarily successful without like tons of passion. Like they can find a place where the economics work. But from the people that have left an impact on me, I have found a deep sense of passion and purpose. And actually, I would say the people that have been the most successful, and again, ignoring monetary gain, ignoring that traditional, kind of line of success, the people that have left an impact on their communities, that maybe have built great businesses, and I think have impacted those around them, all have a deep sense of purpose and incredible passion for what they do. And I think when you're an entrepreneur, you recognize that passion doesn't equate to ease, right? Or loving every day. I don't love every day of my job. I think that's one of the great traps of entrepreneurship. I think people, you hear it from people all the time, like, oh, I hate my job. You know, I had to do things I didn't want to do today. And it's like, no doubt, I love my job. I love my career. I love this company. It is, what I eat, sleep, and breathe. And there are plenty of days, the last few weeks have been just a drag. I've had to force myself to go to work. That's just part of it. So from those people, who I've been so fortunate to share the table with, I think a deep sense of purpose. I'm attracted to people that have humility. I've just always been kind of unattracted to arrogance. I don't think that you get to learn much from people that are arrogant because, they don't recognize, I don't think they recognize the difficult things or maybe some of the more human elements of success, right? Of the climb. I think it's typically like, yeah, I did a pretty amazing thing and made it all happen. And I think they kind of like to diminish the difficulty. And so I just don't find myself learning much from those folks. And yeah.
So you said you eat, sleep, and breathe your company all day and every day. And what's funny is in the middle of, like, I can feel this. I haven't asked you what your purpose is, but that's going to come out throughout this conversation, the purpose and the passion, right? But I felt from you when you said, "Man, it's been a drag for 3 weeks." But then in the midst of it, there's a little bit of a grin. I can see and feel the pain of whatever that drag is, but there's a little bit of a grin because there's some grit, there's some grind, there's determination. Like there's characteristics inside of people that can come out in these nonverbals, and it's like, man, this dude ain't quit. Like he's going to keep
Yeah.
going, right? And so,
Yeah.
what about your business? You eat, sleep, and breathe. Explain this. Commonwealth Sports, right? That's what you're speaking to.
Yeah. Commonwealth Sports. Well, it's funny because when years ago I tried to do a startup called Sonder that was experience marketplace. It was basically connecting makers with doers, right? And in the midst of me launching, Airbnb came out with their experiences, and I had a friend that worked at Airbnb, and I was probably 8 months in, and it was just me. I was bootstrapping the whole thing. I'd spent probably 40, 50 grand on development costs. And my buddy at Airbnb said, man, if we didn't have our core business, the lodging business, he's like, we would never do this business. And I was like, it's a race to the bottom. That's not what I'm good at. I don't want to just get commoditized and figure out how we make this cheap. I'm like, it's not for me. But what I recognized is it was really tapping into, I want to help people come alive. It's like what the world needs is people that have come alive and like tapped into whatever it is that they're called to do, right? And that's not an easy thing. Like it's always been very easy for me because I'm a doer. Like one of my top 5 kind of Clifton strengths, actually the top 5 is activation. So it's easier for me to, if you and I started talking about a business idea right now and I got excited about it, it would be easier for me to build a website and start doing something toward that business in the next 8 hours than it would be for me to mail an envelope. Like mailing envelopes, this is just a funny kind of quirk. Maybe it's my ADD, whatever. I can't do it. It is one of the most impossible things. You want to start a business, like the creative side, whatever, put me in, coach. Like I'll go right now. And we'll, in a couple hours, we could have probably something pretty amazing, especially now that I've been playing with this AI stuff. Like, but so I want to help people experience the world in a more powerful way. And what Commonwealth does is it lets people tap into something that otherwise has been reserved for a select few. Like, look, the sport of kings, it's called the sport of kings for a reason. It's been typically reserved for millionaires and billionaires. It's very expensive. It's very difficult, very risky. And the same goes for other sports, right? Like golfers have for a long time been getting backed by wealthy guys from their dad's country club or, from local places. And like to be able to watch people share in victory is such an amazing thing. Like I worked as a sales guy for years at a company called Epifio in Cincinnati. I know that Stephen and Lori, Stephen McClure and Lori. I worked there for years, loved it, right? And as a sales guy, you get to feel, and I know you get this from real estate, like you get to feel a sense of victory when you make that sale or you create a connection. A lot of people, from my perspective, miss out on a sense of victory every day because their jobs just don't involve that. Or, and I think some people could argue that maybe people need to reframe their view on the world. Like maybe you could create more sense of victory if you, thought about what victory actually meant. But without getting too abstract, what we do is like, I get to put you in a literal or, even proverbial way on that winner's podium. And you get to feel like you're a part of something because you are that's bigger than yourself. And for me, that's super powerful.
So why believe in you guys, you and your partner? You started, Commonwealth. You can download this app. I didn't download, but I checked it out. You can download it. You can invest and correct me if any of my SEC terms are wrong. You guys know all these pages of this, right? But you can invest $50 and buy a share of a horse, whatever that is. And so why you guys? Because there's a lot more people coming into the space. I'm not saying the horse industry, but you can do micro shares of real estate now. And there's all these platforms that are being developed. So why you guys?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And there's definitely the micro share and kind of fractional ownership space has definitely exploded. We're miles ahead of anybody in sports, which we love. And that's where our core focus is. Like there's folks that are doing it and doing it very well and kind of fractional investments. And we don't like to think of this as an investment. Like, we like to think it's like VC. It's kind of like venture capital, It's very risky with real opportunities for outsized returns. And Brian and I intentionally started in racing and golf because we are both experts in those two places. Brian, who built out the business model and is our CEO and really birthed this thing through seeing this exact thing happening at a company called Rally Road that was doing this with collector cars and doing it in a really compelling way, right? Selling $600,000 cars out in less than 24 hours at $35 a share. And he was like, man, there's something here. And so I was the guy that he knew that knew horses. And he had identified horse racing as a sport that would be great to launch in, that, you had to have some level of expertise. There was a real barrier to entry because of money. And these horses could win. He knew they could win a ton of money. And it was also niche enough that it'd be a great launch sport to kind of do it quietly and kind of get our ducks in a row. And, it oftentimes it made me feel awkward to say, but I'm an expert. I've done this since I was 4 years old. I've worked with the best in the world. I thought about going to vet school because I love science. I get it too. There's a lot of things that I'm comfortable doing that most people are like, shouldn't a vet be doing that? And I obviously don't do that to our racehorses, but I'm comfortable in every aspect of the horse industry. And it was very easy for me to begin in racing. The same goes for Brian. He's a scratch golfer. He loves the sport. He knows the sport. In kind of pursuing some of these golf candidates, Brian's actually beaten some of the candidates that we've been looking at to sign. And what's amazing, it's just like watching, and Brian's experience was kind of watching me walk into this horse racing scene and seeing some of the top trainers in the world kind of very quickly take a shine to me because they knew like, oh, wow, this guy's passionate. He knows what he's talking about. And he also is eager to learn. Brian steps onto the golf course and, there's always an air of skepticism with any new business, right? Where you're like, what are these guys trying to do? Are these two tech guys just thinking they're going to come in and understand our sport? And they're like, oh, wow. He drives one off, off the tee and they're like, oh, wow, this guy knows golf. Okay, we get it. So, I think we come to this business with a great deal of care for both sports. We have the expertise and the experience to pull this off. And, I think I like to believe what people do rather than what they say. We both deeply care about the sports that we're beginning in. And, we've even recognized like ways that we can clean up, like golfers, for instance, and Brian knew this very early on. Golfers have traditionally signed very predatory deals. They're giving up like 60% of their income, which, in fairness to the people that are funding them, it's for one person to do it, it's a risky endeavor. But we're like, no. This is not the way to do it. We want to make sure that golfers are set up. These are mutually beneficial. And look, I like to believe what people say I like to believe what people do rather than what people say. And, in 4 years, we've won the Kentucky Derby. Really, in 2 years of being fully active, we've won the Kentucky Derby. We've won the Dubai World Cup, the second richest horse race in the world. We've been second twice in the richest horse race in the world, the $20 million Saudi Cup. And, I think the other thing is, more importantly, is that we have led with the thing that I'm proud of, even more than our success. We've led with integrity at every step of the way. Like we've had a couple horses that we purchased and had every right to offer them. It took us a couple months to get ready to offer them to the public. And in that time, we went from loving them to kind of having questions like, we've had them long enough. And we just don't think they're going to be something special. So we ate the cost. And, and we're talking like as a startup that Brian and I bootstrapped for years, never taking a salary. And we didn't have the extra money to go, hey, that $60,000 purchase that we made, for 10, 15, 20% of that horse, we're going to eat it. We'll keep the horse. We're going to try and race it, see what we can do, but we're not putting that on our users. So, I think that when you combine the passion, the expertise, and the track record of success, I'm proud of what our team has accomplished, and I think we're the pony to bet on.
Oh, what an analogy, huh? And so when you're picking a horse to invest in, Is it similar to picking a human being to invest in golf? Are there similarities in traits?
Yeah, I think there are. Like, you want to look for innate talent. You want to look for, one of the things Brian loved about Joey Verzich, one of our golfers. He's a gritty guy. He's tough. Um, you watch him out on the green, and there are times he gets pissed, and he's a raw talent. And Brian really loved that about him. And Brian gets the game, right? Where it's a little bit different with horses than it is with humans is that we also, there's there's a pedigree component that we don't look at in horses. I don't care who the golfer's parents are. I do care who the horse's parents are. And it's an important piece. One, because of commercial value down the road, right? Like, you could get the most talented horse in the world, and the reality is if you take a very well-bred horse versus a horse that is not well-bred, meaning parents aren't very noteworthy or didn't do very well, they could do this. Let's just say all things being equal, they do the exact same thing. This well-bred horse is going to be worth a great deal more than the other horse. That's just how the game goes, because you want to look at a pattern of success, and what the pedigree says is, man, this is a family of horses that have not only done very well, but produced other very good horses. And that means a lot to people down the road. And that's where racehorses are very valuable, right? Like, you could have a horse that wins $3 million on the racetrack, which is, that's an outlier, of course, and that's a great deal of money. But if it's a well-bred horse and they won the right races, they could be worth 40, 50, 60 million dollars as a breeding horse. And that's where things get very exciting with our model. And one of the things we're continuously kind of circling around. We want to make sure they've got that commercial value after their career.
So you recently had a partnership, I think, with WinStar Farms. Is that correct?
That's right. That's right.
So what does that do for you guys and the platform and that connection? What's the significance of that for you and for the customers and people that,
Yeah, no, great question. Well, going in, we said, before we take on any investors or any partners, we want to be sure that we are always independently owned and operated. I never wanted anybody to be able to say, like, oh man, such and such farm or partner is just sending their bad horses to, try and get Commonwealth to sell them. And so I always wanted to be able to stand back and go, look at the opportunities and objectively say, yes, I'd like a part of that one. No, I don't want a part of that one. Nobody can make us take a horse, right? So when we did this strategic partner with WinStar, I had created a kind of short list of the best kind of owners and operators in horse racing based on their track record. And WinStar was always our number one pick. They, I know the executive team, we know the owners. They're incredibly integral people. They're wonderful family from Texas, and they've killed it year after year after year. I mean, they had Justify, the Triple Crown winner. They've had multiple Kentucky Derby winners before that, Breeders' Cup winners. I mean, as breeding farms go, they are the best performer. So typically, these breeding farms, either they breed or they race. You don't typically have breeding farms that also have really successful racing wings, because they're separate businesses, right? And WinStar had both, and they've been amazing at it. So it was a really easy decision. And what we figured is, these guys know how to pick horses. And we're always like, Mage, funny enough, was not a WinStar horse. But our first horse with WinStar was Country Grammar. Country Grammar was purchased for $130,000. And he went on to become last year's highest earning racehorse in the world. He won $10.5 million. He won the Dubai World Cup. He's now earned, I think, $14.5 million. He earned another $3 million this year. And we had the favorite in the Belmont with WinStar. His name was We the People. And so, I think one of the best things that you can do in business is buddy up to people that have gone before you and that have shown, that are, going to bring you along and take you on a fast track to success, and have shown that they do it with integrity and with passion. And so for us, it was the perfect marriage. It was like, yeah, where do we sign? Let's get after this thing. And we have, and it's been pretty amazing.
So, hey, you mentioned earlier about bootstrapping the business.
Yeah.
What's that mean to you? What's that term mean?
Well, to me, it was very much a burn the ships kind of moment. Brian and I initially, we knew the business model would work. We just did. And so we didn't even really do an MVP, to be honest. We saw it was working. We knew there was demand. And so for us, the bootstrap was we're going to get this thing as far as we can. We built in stealth. We didn't announce it to the public. We saw, told family and friends and people like that. But, Brian and I just kind of continuously, there's like you find whatever your bottom is and you keep digging. To me, that's how I think about bootstrapping something. It was, even when we raised our kind of first round of seed capital, we didn't go out looking for a huge value. We didn't look to raise a bunch of money and brag about how much money we'd raised. We were like, no, we want to keep control of this business. We believe in it. So we put more money in. And, I continue to work as a sales guy. And it was, there were some very, very difficult times. I mean, we survived COVID. I worked as a sales guy, finally quit in November of 19. I remember we were Christmas. We thought we were going to have this huge investment come in from a pretty noteworthy investor. And I think it was Christmas. He was like, yeah, you know what? We're going to sit out. And I quit my job and, thankfully still had residual income coming in. And I remember kind of hitting that moment. That felt like one of those, the bottoms, right? And it was like, all right, well, we have to keep going. So we kept going. And I kept having some, income come in, and we made it through COVID and had investors court us, leave us high and dry. We kind of kept hitting those bottoms. I mean, once COVID hit, we survived that. That winter, I remember my power got shut off my place. I had to run out and stop somebody from turning my water off. And fast forward to Dubai World Cup 2022, I had $120 in my bank account. I was in Dubai. The race pays for everything. So what's amazing is I flew there first class. I was in this 5-star hotel. I had $120 in my bank account. I could only eat dinner where they paid for it and breakfast. And I was like, we win the Dubai World Cup. I had $120 in my bank account that night. And so for me, the bootstrapping, it's interesting. Those two things go hand in hand with the idea of pulling yourself up by your bootstraps, right? And I think it's strap in and dig down and see what the depth of your belief is in the business that you're running after. And it's clarifying, right? You find out what you really believe in those moments. When things are easy, it's not that interesting. But those were some of the worst days of my life and some of the most joyful kind of times that I had, because we were fighting.
What fortified you to be the person that you are capable of going through that?
My faith. I knew that no matter what I faced, that that Jesus would make sure that I wasn't alone. And it's if you want to see something actually come to life, it's like, go do it. And I remember I have some incredible faith building stories throughout this entire journey. I was laying in bed one night and I was stressed about money. I had no money. I mean, zero. I needed $400 for the next day to make a payment, or it was not going to be good. It wasn't like, oh, it was late. I mean, it was late. And I laid in bed and I just said, Lord, I'm really stressed about money and I could use your help. That's it. I didn't tell anybody. I'm not the best at taking help. I did have to learn to take help from people in this journey, which was such a blessing. But that's all I said. I went to sleep, rolled over. I was exhausted. I woke up the next morning, went to jog down the steps to leave for the day, get to work. And I felt this voice say, go check the mailbox. And I'm like, I don't need to check the mailbox. I check the mailbox at night. and I already got the mail, and it was a go. So I was like, okay. Okay, so I jog back up the steps. I open the mailbox, and there is an envelope with my name written in Sharpie marker. And I was like, oh, that's weird. And I open it up, and it said, Chase, God told me to give this to you, and it was $400 cash. I still have the picture on my phone saved in my favorites. And it was like waterworks. I mean, and it's not just moments like that. Like, that's like a fun story, right? It's about so much more than that. But, it was even recognizing like humility, like having to say to people like, man, I'm broke, or I'm afraid, or I'm alone. I feel lonely, because it's very lonely trying to build a business. Like, while a lot of friends got to go out and do things, I had to stay home, and I couldn't spend money on going to have dinners and get drinks. And I was single at the time, and it's a very lonely experience. And that's why I believe I don't believe that entrepreneurship is for everybody. And that's not to say I don't think that sets you or I apart as necessarily like special people, not to diminish who you and I are. But I also don't like, it's like, I mean, that's not even talking about me. It's just, there's a lot of people that they want to work a 9 to 5. I think that's awesome. It's like, make sure you know what you want, because it's, this Derby, the Derby press that we've gotten and being on NBC Sports, that's all cool. But like, that goes away really fast. And I'm so grateful for it. But the really beautiful stuff, the stuff that like grew me and made me, I think, more whole, and stripped off maybe some of the junk the world's tried to put on me, are those moments when I was journaling, really scared about money. Moments that I was journaling, frankly, like, I think you never start a business thinking you're going to fail, clearly. But I have moments that I wrote in a journal, like, what does it say about me if I fail? Like, I want to be successful. I want to be meaningful. And, I started to recognize, like, once you get through that, you start to recognize that isn't where your meaning comes from. And even if I fail tomorrow, this business failed tomorrow, I would be okay.
What do you do if that ever happens and you guys are in a pretty good spot? So you got a really good run ahead of here. You got new office space that you're talking about being in. You're pumped and excited. Doesn't matter that jacket you're wearing and the shirt pulled halfway open and you got the hat on. Doesn't matter. I know that passion, the drive you've got, you guys are going to go on a run here. And so, but if it all ended tomorrow, what's Chase do on Saturday morning? So if it's over, what do you do?
I think take a pause and wait and see what I'm supposed to do next. I think I would go, all right, I'm grateful for what I got to do with this business. I don't want to act like I wouldn't be upset, but that's really also not my personality. I'm very much okay, next. And I wouldn't rush into anything, but I just know the way that I'm wired. A new idea would come up, or the thing that I'm grateful for, I grew up with working class parents. And I remember my dad worked since he was 18 at a paper mill, and the paper mill went bankrupt, okay, and took all of my dad's retirement that he had saved. He didn't go to college. He's worked his butt off, actually made a lot of money, like for a factory worker. Like, he busted his butt, and the company took everything. And I'll never forget, the next day my dad got in his pickup truck, and he and my mom, I remember my mom saying, like, it's going to be fine. She's like, you've got a lot of things that you can do. You just need to get busy doing them. My dad got in his pickup truck the next day and started doing roofs, right? He started roofing people's houses, and he did odd jobs here and there. We never lost our house, and thank God, like, not everybody's that fortunate, but he started using his hands, and he got to work. And he kept marching. And then, you know what? He strapped his boots on. He went back to work, and he ended up getting another job eventually. And so I'm grateful for that kind of upbringing, because I was raised to believe, like, it's never over, right? So if I had to go get another job to survive, okay, no big deal. There's other things I can do. And I'm sure a new idea would come to me eventually.
So we talked about 9 to 5. I don't know if him working in the mill, I don't know if it was a 9 to 5 job. I don't know. I'm assuming he probably put some extra hours in. But
yeah.
What do you think? Because that's where I came from too. I came from a blue collar family, and not wealthy at all. Some massive struggles growing up financially, and
Yeah.
I actually benefit from those now. Right, the mindset. And so, what does someone do if they find themselves in the 9 to 5 job? Do you have the knowledge, the thought process, the expertise, the perspective to share? Like, what do you do if you want more out of life, but you're in this 9 to 5 job?
Yeah, I think the first thing that's really important um, for people to do, and I I don't know the best way to do this, but I think a lot of people don't really recognize what it is that they want, and I've recognized that at times that I didn't actually know what I want. So, I've often heard this idea, right, that if you know what you want and you don't have it, people are so resourceful and hardworking and and smart and gritty, however you want to look, tenacious, however you want to look at it. If you don't have it, there's a chance that you don't really want it, or it's not that important to you. Like I remember at times, when I used to kind of idolize money when I was a lot younger. I thought that was kind of the pinnacle of success. I do not believe that anymore. I think money's a great tool, but I know a lot of people that have a great deal of money and are very, very miserable. And I don't want to live miserably. Like I'm an Enneagram 7. I want to be free and be joyful and not be shackled by anything. And so, which isn't always, a great quality. But I used to be like, man, I'm really bummed because I don't make enough money. Well, you know what I recognized? Like I had a lot of opportunities to take jobs where I would have made a ton of money, like sales jobs for medical device companies and things. And it didn't fit my passion. And so what was funny is I was judging myself against this belief that I wanted something and I just was not good enough to get it or was behind. What I recognized is family, freedom, creativity, those things were far more important to me than money. And by the way, look back at all the things that I had done. It all those that all added up. It's like I had turned down opportunities to make more money. And so once I settled into that, it's like, okay, wow, what is it that I do want? So I think that's step one. Like, what is it that you really want? Step two, what's the smallest thing you could do today? And this is tough for people. And I recognize this because for me, I don't do small steps, I do big steps. So, but small steps are very easy. But it's like, what's the one thing you could do today that could help push you in the direction of discovering what it is that you want? I am so insanely fortunate that I know what my passion is. And I've known since I was 4 years old. And I'm fortunate that I get to do it. Right. But like, because some people, it's like, man, well, my passion was basketball. Like, I didn't get to be in the NBA. Okay, there are so many jobs in athletics. Like, if you're truly passionate about basketball, like you watch the Air movie. I don't know if you've seen that
Awesome.
about Michael Jordan.
I took our whole company. I took our whole company to it, man. I reserved the
Yeah.
theater.
Okay. So look at him. Look at that character who's Matt Damon's character who's like not doesn't really fit in any of these places and gets in a shoe company. Like you hear about that stuff all the time. So I think those are two really important things. It's like, what's the one thing? What do you want? What do you really care about? Sometimes that process is best found through journaling. Maybe if you're taking some time, ask people that you love and trust and want the best for you. And then I think second step is what's the smallest thing you could do today to move yourself in a direction to align you with some of those values or some of those opportunities. Like crap, maybe it's the smallest thing. Like I believe that God put stuff in front of us in miraculous ways. So like, if you're not there or you're like, man, I don't believe in God, I'm like, cool, no problem. But who knows? You want to call it the universe? I don't care what you call it. But amazing things happen when you put yourself in a position to latch on to those moments. So, you don't get to win the race if you're not in it. So if basketball is your passion, how can you get yourself closer to basketball today?
So, what do you do to continue to educate and grow your mind and your knowledge? What are you doing?
I am spending as much time around with as much time as I can. I spend around people that know more than me. I like to say I want to be around people that have forgotten more than I know. And so I love to it's funny. It's as simple as I like to go to the barns in the morning and I hear from all these old horse trainers and I ask them questions that you might be like, why are you asking that question? Like I heard a guy the other day say, he's like, yeah, he's done it for 30 years. He was an assistant trainer to his brother. His brother is one of the greatest trainers of all time. And assistant trainers don't get any of the glory. They do almost all the work though. So this is an experienced dude, right? And he goes, yeah, I've just found that horses that have bad feet also have breathing problems. And he goes, I don't know why. 30 years of training though. And he goes, and I'm not saying they start as bad feet, but if a breathing problem shows up, he's like, check their feet. I bet their feet are also really sore. And I was like, why do you think that is? And he goes, I think it's stress. That's they don't put that in books. Okay. That's not on Google. That's such a small thing that I could start to recognize, man, you know what? We got a horse that's stressing. His feet are not looking good. We should watch his breathing. That's a kind of maybe is a silly example, but I love stuff like that.
No, I think it's spot on, man. No, it's spot on. I think, see, that's not something that I don't think someone's going to write that in a book. And I don't even know if he knew in the moment. He obviously knows it's something he's figured out. But I don't know, me not even being in the horse industry, me hearing that, it's like, man, that might be one of the 20 best pieces of advice that I put into my brain that I go out here and build. Because then it would be like, well, hey, this we're going to buy this horse, but what do his parents, what are its parents' feet like?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
To evaluate and be like, are there, right?
There's these nuggets that you start to pull together, these little moments of these little kind of bits of gold that you can get from people. And the other thing that I found is if you really listen to people, really listen, and you got somebody that's more experienced than you, and even if sometimes I just shut up, I don't even ask questions. I'm just sitting there like a sponge listening, which is funny because I love to talk. I'm happy to talk. I also do not need to speak. If there's a meeting and something's being said, I don't feel the need to add. There's so much that you can learn and improve from if you get yourself in proximity with people that have gone before you that and that are great at what they do. I think you're the average of the people that you spend time around, and I want to be around people that know more, have done more, and by the way, sometimes it's not just oh, I want to be around the goats. I want to be around people that'll make me a better person too. And maybe that's a man or a woman that hasn't done anything remarkable with their career, but is a great dad or a great mom or, a great leader. Whatever.
Do you intentionally seek those people out, or do you just find them?
Yeah, probably a little bit of both. I think I'm a little bit more of a shoot from the hip kind of person. I wish that I was more proactive and intentional with certain things. I think I'm kind of like one of those guys I've jumped so many times and constructed my own parachute and it's worked that it's been its own self-fulfilling prophecy, where it's oh man, I'm going to get better at planning. And then I do a thing and I'm like, oh, man, I didn't really plan for that at all. And it went okay. So, and it's chase, but, no, I've just been fortunate to kind of bump into these people. And I also like to make it, there are a couple people that are kind of outside my network that I actually have on a list right now that I want to reach out to and be like, hey, can we start getting breakfast once a month? Because I think there's a lot that I could learn from them. So I am trying to push myself to do that. But the people that I'm around right now are just people that I've identified that it's that person has something that you don't. And you know what? I think that you grow a lot if you put yourself in a position to shut up and listen to them.
So so you're talking a little bit about an it factor.
Yeah.
It's tough to explain what it is. Do you believe in that when you see they've got it?
Yeah, no, I think it's true. Because look, there are horses like that. And this is one of the things that I love about horses, that horses have taught me so much about people. There are people and there are horses that just stand heads above the rest. This day and age, we don't love to say stuff like that. But it's true. What I like to do is I like to pick horses that make me go whoa, Now horse, I'm like, yeah, it's a nice horse. I want a horse that makes me go like, I have to have it or it's going to make me sick. You know, our Belmont, our horse that won in the Belmont, like I saw his picture and video for the first time and I was like, we have to have that. Mage, our Kentucky Derby winner. I saw him in the flesh for the first time and I was like, done. That's an excellent horse. And so I think that people absolutely have it. And it's, and I think it can present itself in a lot of different ways. But I think that those people have a specific set of traits. It can, of course, be different traits, but that come together in such a way that there's either a magnetism or I'm like wanting to articulate it, but it's hard to articulate. I think it's a little bit tough, like quality. Right? Like look at an expensive piece of furniture. Steve Jobs always used to talk about this with design, right? Sometimes you don't know why it's better, but you can always tell when something has more quality. Like you just can. It's like there's something. There's just something that makes it look like, man, some more time and attention went into this than something else. IKEA furniture can look great, but when you touch it, you feel it. It's like, man, there's nothing quite like the genuine article.
So, what do you think makes us able to identify it? What's that strength? What's that characteristic?
I don't know. My kind of funny quirk is that, so I love to impersonate people. It's my little like comedic shtick. I pick up on people's kind of nuances and quirks like almost instantly. So individualization is one of my, kind of Clifton Strengths Finder top 5 traits. So I very quickly notice what people's kind of what they bring to the table. It just happens for me.
Is it an intuition?
Yeah, I think it probably is. I think that I'm very sensitive, so I pay attention to, and I love to figure out what makes people tick because I think it makes it easier to work with folks. Like we're all so different, and it's tough. I think one of the hardest parts about business is working with it's the people, and I love people. I actually genuinely enjoy. I'm an extrovert. I love relating with people. Like that's part of what I love about my business. And it's one of the hardest parts about our business. In any business. I mean, it'd be a lot easier.
Why is it so hard? Why is it so hard for you? Like when you say that it's hard, because I'm not disagreeing at all. I actually agree. I try not to agree too much in these podcasts because it's like, hey, this is about you, your perspective, what you're building and what you're doing. But why is it hard? Why is that the hard part of business?
I think because we all have our own struggles, right? We're all great at representing our own point of view. And I think it's very easy for us to get lost inside of that. And, the world is tense right now. It's, and we all have our quirks and our positives, our negatives. And when the reality is people are messy. And when somebody brings their whole self or even part of their self, they're going to bring their mess with them, myself included. And when you're in business, you have to deal with that mess. So, recently we sent out an email that was completely innocuous. It was very clear. And I spoke with tons and tons of people. It doesn't matter what we send. We'll have somebody email us very, very angry. And I always look at that like, man, there's got to be it's not just that this email isn't the thing that's making them angry. And who knows why? Man, maybe they just buried a family member. Maybe they're struggling with their finances. Maybe they're sick of their job. Like there's so many things. And when we bring people together, those things are just inevitably going to collide.
And if you want to succeed, you better find the unlock.
Yeah. No, yeah, you do. I mean, the reality is
a way to connect with them, right?
Yep. Yeah, you don't get anywhere without people. And so, there are certain people that I have decided I don't need to get to my next place with you. I forgive you, like bless you. I think, you go your own way. But the tract I cannot take is you can't do that all the time with everybody, where it's like, I hear a lot of people talk about boundaries, and it's like, yes, we should all have boundaries, clearly. And I think we need to be careful that our boundaries aren't just a way for us to not have to deal with people's difficulties, because you're going to end up alone. And so, there's a lot of times I have to just take one on the chin, smile, and be like, okay. And you know what? I've had a lot of people send nasty emails, and we deal with thousands and thousands of people, and we're still a 4-man team. And I intercept all these emails. And I've had them like, my favorite thing is, how do I take somebody that's really pissed off and get them over to this place where they're like excited and happy? Because I think a lot of times people are expecting, like, if I come at you with anger, you're going to come back at me with anger. And you're kind of waiting for the fight. You're like, I'm mad. I almost want you to be mad so that I can stay mad. And I'm like, oh, geez, I'm so sorry about that. Blah, blah, blah. And they're like, then like the next emails, they're like a little less terse. I go back and we yada, 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 little less terse. So like, I'm always trying to find a moment that we can have some sort of human connection. Like, where are you from? Or I'll find out, I'm like, man, I didn't know you were a Michigander. I was a Michigander. I grew up in Kalamazoo. And the people are like, they go from like over here to, they're like, oh my gosh. So
so you said somewhere in the past, some interview I read, or I don't know where it was, it could have been on your LinkedIn, could have been somewhere, you said, don't be afraid to be a bit of a troublemaker.
yeah.
What's up with that, man?
It was funny. A guy that I used to work with, Josh Gott, he's one of the most brilliant people. Talk about a guy that has it. He has it. It's like Stephen McClure has it, like with people and relationship. I mean, he's also brilliant. I mean, brilliantly smart. Josh Gott is one of those guys. He's a brilliant creative. You spit something out to him and he'll say it back to you in a better way, like instantly. It's obnoxious. It's actually disgusting. I'm like, okay. I'm like, yeah, we get it. All right, Josh. So he told me once, he's like, you're a troublemaker. Like you're a troublemaker. And I like sat with that for a little bit. And I think it's because like, I want to bump up against things. Like, I don't want to take I want to, in the road less traveled sounds like cliche and kind of annoying. But the reality is, if you're going to go and take the beaten path, you're going to have to bump up against stuff. Like, with entrepreneurship, you can't ask for permission for everything, because if you do, everybody will tell you it can't be done, or you're not allowed to do it. They just will. I mean, my mom always told me, act like you belong and you belong.
Well,
my mom
you also stated in the past too, you say like sales is so much like entrepreneurship.
Yeah. Yeah. You control your own path. And like, the reality is, if you ask for permission for everything, you will get nowhere. Because also, I think there's a lot of people that are like, they don't really give a rip if you're successful or not. Like, it's not, their job is not to be like, well, hey, Mark, let me open all the doors for you. It's like, no, you sometimes have to kick doors in. And you also have to do things that maybe haven't been done before. And clearly, like with for me, like the troublemaking, where I draw a fine line is like, for me, authenticity, integrity are like top for me. Like, they can take everything they want from me. I will not give up my authenticity or my integrity. But beyond that, I'm like, let's go. If I have to ask for permission for everything, we would never have Commonwealth, because so many people told us, you can't do it. You won't get good enough horses. You won't be able to get the people. You won't be able to build a platform. In sales, it's the same thing. Like, oftentimes, I would have a client call at Epifio and they'd be like, I want this kind of video. And I'd be like, think about it. And if I was like an order taker, I'd be like, okay, this is the price. And I'd look at their stuff and I go, that's not what you need. I would often have time. I would have clients that like would come back a couple years later. They're like, you told me not to do that. And like, you were so right. They're like, by the way, we're ready to spend a couple $100,000 on a video package. Like, now we know we need it. And so that's the kind of troublemaker side, I think, that has served me well, where it's just like, yeah. Not worried about that. What about this? Like, let's get in the weeds.
But it's tough too, right? It takes you down places that are sometimes really tough.
Yes. Yeah. No. I mean, you don't. That's part of why it says trouble. I mean,
yeah. If you push up against some orthodoxy, you're going to have some problems.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, there's no playbook once you go there either. Like if you start going, if you jump out of the playbook, if you decide I don't want to be in the playbook, you have to understand that there is no hand holding for you once you go down that road. It's like, which way do I go? Well, I don't know. We've never been this way. How the heck? And there's no GPS. I mean, for so much of what we do, and I feel like any entrepreneur, they recognize that, like, yeah, there are nice templatized things out there that you can glean from, like, where there's some savings, generally speaking. But by and large, when you're doing something that people haven't done before, there is no moment that you get to be like, well, what do you do next? There's no recipe, there's no secret. It's like, go try it. If that doesn't work, pivot, figure it out, put it in reverse, whatever you have to do, keep going until you figure it out.
So is the word why, is that a good or a bad word in entrepreneurship and in life? Because I have a second question I want to ask about it, but what's your thoughts about why?
Yeah, I think it's just where I think it can be difficult is like I think it puts a lot of pressure on people. Like I talked to you before, okay? I think passion and purpose are huge. Sometimes with why though, like because I totally believe in it, where it's put me in a funny place before is like there are moments sometimes it's not until I'm inside of it that like or down the road a bit that I can understand why. Like when I first started Commonwealth, we didn't have enough traction. We didn't have this community that we were building. We weren't even really at the races. I couldn't really tell you why at that moment. And I think that ideology can make people feel guilty for not knowing instantly. I would just make sure that it's more than just. I think in the early stages, I think your why kind of develops, right? It expands and or maybe it concentrates. You can start to hit a bullseye with your why. In the beginning, I would just make sure that your why isn't just money, because you know some startups are profitable or making money very quickly. Others, most of them, since 95% fail or whatever, most of them won't. So I would just make sure that you're aligning with your. I think the most important thing, the most important kind of why, is that you're aligning with enough of your purpose and passion that you're like, man, even if I come out of this scarred, beaten, and bruised, I'm going to have grown so much because I feel aligned, not just because, by the way, you could just come out broke. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, I think so. So here's the question too. Like if, because I'll be real, I've been doing this. The company I started that I'm running now, that is really takes up the 95% of my time, is it's a real estate company. I started 15 years ago. It took me 7 or 8 years until I really had a bullseye target on what the why was. And so, but then,
Mm-hmm.
so then I go back to the beginning and I try to help people. And what do I share on what I've learned? I've learned so many things, more through failure than success. That's true. But the the why in the beginning just had to be like, make a decision, because my passion wasn't real estate. It wasn't. And so I just made a decision for the reasons I made a decision at 25 or 26-year-old, obtained my real estate license. And the attitude that I had was, if I'm going to choose to do something, I got to choose to do it well.
Yeah.
And right, choosing to do it well means a lot of different things, but it means a time commitment. It means that you're going to be willing to overcome obstacles. It's going to, like, when everybody tells you can't, you're going to keep going. Like, guys, I made a decision. So I'm not giving myself a so-called backup plan. I'm not doing that, because if you do, there's a lot of off ramps that you're going to take when it gets hard. I've learned that. And so
Yeah.
when you choose to do something, and it's like, well, Mark, what if I fail? Like, when should I quit? Because I talked to somebody recently about quitting. And if I look back on my life, we've all quit at some things. Just the older you get, the more significant those quits become.
Mm-hmm.
And at least that's the experience of my life. It's like it gets more serious. And I just want to make sure that now when I choose to do something, that I see it through. And
Mm-hmm.
seeing it through is probably not going to be 3 months. It's probably not going to be 6 months, not a year. It's kind of like, guys, you got to do this for a few years to actually prove out, should you have done it? Do you have the skills? Do you have the talent? And so all those people that are questioning, like everybody you talk to, man, you went through it. I went through it. Everyone. There's all these people that doubt and question what we're doing. This is another form of why. Why do you think that is? Well, how can we help people that, do you want to be an entrepreneur? Do you want to be a business owner? Should you take this leap? What is that piece that you can come to terms with about the people around you that supposedly even care the most about you? Tell you shouldn't do it. You can't. It's not going to work. Why do you think that is? Do you know? Do you have an opinion on this?
Yeah, well, I think in a way, like, why should they believe in it? They're not connected to it. Oftentimes some of the best things are unbelievable. And so I think that is kind of that is what attaches to that idea of why, right? Like, I mean, it's not for other people to believe in. It's for you to believe in. And I actually think it's probably one of the most important things that can happen to an entrepreneur because, it's easy to kind of jump in and feel like it's easy to jump into something where everybody's like, yeah, do it. You're getting all this kind of outside affirmation, and affirmation's great. But I'll tell you what, none of those people that affirm you can fix it for you or help you when you're in those kind of dark days of entrepreneurship. Just like the people that told you not to do it, like it's you, right? It's you, it's your team. Like for me, yeah, I leaned on my faith completely. And like, that was me. I have free will. I chose to step into it. And, it's part of what makes the success so gratifying is, the journey through and up until, and like, for me, a lot of people are like, man, you didn't really celebrate the Derby, like, and I did, but I wasn't losing my mind. It was this interesting thing. Like Brian and some of the other guys went ballistic and I loved it. Like I loved every second of it. They went nuts. I was very I sobbed during the Dubai World Cup. That victory felt like a victory for Brian and I. I felt like a gift from God for us. The Derby felt like a victory for our customers. And my girlfriend put it best. I think she was like, this was like the culmination of almost 30 years in the horse business. It had a different kind of weight for me. And, my thought very much, like I was so insanely grateful. I was. And I thought, okay, we've got to get back to work. We have more to do. This isn't the last Derby I want to win. Bob Baffert is one of the greatest trainers in history. He's a great friend of mine. He's done amazing things for us and our horses. He called me and he goes, you're spoiled now. You won the Dubai World Cup. You won the Derby. I said, I'm not spoiled. They said, I'll be spoiled when you win me a Derby next year. But I'm just, it's like, we got to get back to work. And so I think it's a dangerous thing. Like we want to lean on other people and leaning on people is great in terms of support and encouragement. But that the decision to pursue something, just like the decision to get married or the decision to whatever, that you have to own that. That has to extreme ownership. Like you must own your choices because when the days are dark, you don't get to blame it on somebody else. Well, everybody encouraged me or, you said I should do this. No. You have to have the strength of conviction that you're like, I know what my North Star is and I know where I'm going and come hell or high water, like we're going there. And you might fail. But I think because you know in your heart of hearts that you are called to do that thing, the losses and those like very depressing, those very lonely moments, it's like, no, I know I'm supposed to be doing this. And you know what? I loved my old job. It was very, very difficult for me to leave. I was passionate about it. And I also would like to say, by the way, just as a non sequitur, passion is risky because like you said, I love what you said about real estate. Like you didn't know. I'm sure there was something inside of real estate though that you connected to that maybe you couldn't quite put your finger on, which I think is really the most important thing. Like passions can grow and evolve and you'll never know them if you don't try things. I think it's maybe my bigger warning is like, don't do things that you do not like. Our time here is limited. If you hate something, do not do it. I mean, like broadly speaking, obviously there's days that I hate some of the things that I have to do, but I love big picture, right? And so if you hate the big picture, don't do it. But I loved my job and I was great at it. And there was a future for me. I had opportunities for equity in the company right before I left and a big promotion and all these things. And I could have stayed there and been really happy. And you know what? When I left and those days were really hard, it sucked looking in the rearview mirror. I hired my cousin to take my spot. He was killing it, which I loved because I love him and he's like a brother to me. And I love to see him thriving. But I've got zero money and I'm going like, did I screw up? Like, did I screw up? I could be making like six figures, like, and very rapidly growing six figures, loving the job, whatever. But then I would be in Dubai or I'd be like at these auctions, right? And I'm like, no. Like, by the way, I'm still broke in Dubai, but no, that other job couldn't offer this. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. So I was like, okay, turn the rear view mirror so it's looking elsewhere and like, just keep going down the road.
Yeah.
Foot on the skinny pedal on the right, keep it between the ditches and go.
So where does this confidence come from? Because you have a significant amount of it. And I always want to make sure I clarify the difference of it's not arrogance at all, man. And so like, where does that come from? Because there's nobody that's going to stop you now, man. There's no one stopping you from what you're going to achieve.
Yeah, no, I don't, unless like, there was some extenuating circumstance that just made us do it. It's like, we've gotten through so much. Brian and I and our team have gotten through so much together. It's like, we had kind of a major kind of punch in the stomach following the Derby, because we had to refund a bunch of purchases for like the silly filing error, right? It was not very simple. We have to refund the purchases. Then we'll reoffer them to those exact people. They get their money back. They can reinvest. It's like very, very simple, right? But like, really, we just sold out hundreds of thousands of dollars of these horses. And we're just like, you know what? I was angry for like 2 days. I was pissed. But then I was like, okay, we've gotten through worse. It's very simple. We'll communicate with our users. And guess what? A couple people were mad. Everybody else was like, great, looking forward to it. Thanks for being up front. So we're like, okay, next. Well, one, I think you're refined in fire. Like I think the first place that my confidence comes from is that I know that God's got me no matter what. So I could go broke tomorrow and I'd be okay. We haven't really talked about this. I went through a period, of a year and a half where I was like really struggling with depression and suicidal ideation. It was a really dark time in my life. I remember one night I was working in my like office garage and I like kept hearing this voice. It was like saying, you should just end your life. Like, this isn't working. You're a loser. Quit. And I was like, that's not who I am. That's not what I believe. But it was like this voice in my head just kept saying it. It was frustrating because like I lost my best friend in 8th grade to suicide and we lost family members to it. And I was like, I would never do that to my family. Like, it is truly like, I was never worried about doing it, but it doesn't change how scary and horrible hearing that voice inside your head is. It's horrible. I remember like sitting like this in actually like a brick garage, slamming my computer down, shoving it backpack. I didn't even look to see what I grabbed. I grabbed clothes out of my closet, grabbed them like this, grabbed my toothbrush, duffel bag, shoved everything in, and I drove straight to Michigan to be with my family for a week. Like, I had to get away. And, through, friends and family and prayer, like I got through that time of my life. I actually was, so I'll just tell one more story on like where this confidence comes from. It's important. If I don't tell it, it misses the entire kind of picture. I was driving to Saratoga to go to an investor meeting. And, we gotten lots of bad news. We were broke. And I'm driving up to Saratoga and feeling like a loser. Those thoughts are still in my head. And I was sobbing because I couldn't even hear my own thoughts. It was horrible. Suddenly this rainstorm, like you cannot believe, like, when the rain is so heavy, it sounds like your windshield will crack. I don't know if you've ever been in one of those, but yeah, that out of nowhere, sunny day. Like And I'm like, whoa. And it finally was so loud, I could hear my own thoughts, drowned out the voice. I could hear my own thoughts. And, I heard what I believe was God's voice say, don't miss the miracle. And so I'm like, whoa. I look out the window, the rain stops, and I didn't know where I was at. It's first time driving to Saratoga. I'm at top of this huge valley, and there's this massive rainbow now over this valley. And so I hung on to that word for the next year and a half. And that's part of how I got through. Don't miss the miracle. I did not want to miss the miracle that I believe that God had planned in my life. And so I have story after story after story like that, legitimately, where, I know that I do not walk alone, and I never will. So that's the first place that my confidence comes from. And I think the second is that, it ain't over until it's over. Almost everything is solvable. And if you'll dig in and you'll try, there are amazing, amazing things that are awaiting. And, you don't get to have those special moments unless you're willing to do it. And by the way, like, I say all that, like, I never want to miss a moment to express my extreme gratitude for what I have been able to do, because I know that plenty of other people that honestly that are smarter than me and have worked harder than me haven't gotten to do these things. So I also don't want to oversimplify it. Like, there's blessing and luck involved in our story 100%, but you got to dig in, you got to keep going. And I know that I can do that. And so that's what keeps me. I think that's probably what inspires the confidence that you're talking about.
Yeah. So I think, so to wrap up and spend another minute or two here, you also made a statement in the past that said, what's a great stage if it can't be shared with others?
Yeah. Yeah. It was funny. I think I mentioned it earlier. Dubai World Cup felt like a gift for Brian and I. It was just kind of us and our really core team at the first Dubai World Cup. And like, after all these years of hard work, like, we got to, and Country Grammar is like my heart horse. I remember, during that moment, like, sobbing, and it was like, thank you. Like, we needed this. It saved the company. We got our first, our seed round filed with like one of the greatest investors in the country, brilliant guy, and brought in a bunch of other money, saved the company. And like I said, I had $120 in my bank account. The Derby, as I was walking across the track, we have a member who's wheelchair bound, and she asked me, she was like, please don't, and she's an amazing woman and like a good friend, become a good friend of mine. She's like, please don't forget about me. And I'm like, I won't. I will find you if you win. If we win, I will find you, and you will be in that winner's circle. So we're going down. I've got my girlfriend, her parents with me, and like all these other members. And I'm like, go across the track, get over there. I got to go find Norma. So I ran over, and I'm looking for Norma. I knew kind of the section she was going to be in. And, you got to think Churchill Downs is 140,000 plus people at the Derby. And I find her, and I roll her over, and I'm like, so like out of it. I just start screaming. I'm like, someone help me pick her up. She's in her wheelchair. And I just hear these guys go, let's go, let's go, let's go. And I look over in my periphery, and 3 jockeys come over and help me lift Norma, and we carry her across the track. And I wheel her across the turf field, and I look, and I'm like, Brian and I getting to kiss the trophy. It's like one of the most, kind of lauded, or whatever the word is, kind of moments in sports. One of the greatest moments in sports. The Kentucky Derby is, a top 5 for sure. And I was like, yeah, that's cool. But like, what good is it if you can't bring people along and let them experience the joy and the thrill? Like, it's just a trophy. It's a horse race, right? And to watch people down there sobbing and hugging, and like, by the way, people from all over, different backgrounds, that honestly never would be together otherwise. That is, to me, that's what this business is all about. And that's what makes it worth it. It's what makes me want to sit here on a Friday and go through this spreadsheet that I've been trying to do for a week and is impossibly complex. But that's not even really what I'm great at, but I have to do it because, this office is empty and it's me. So that's the thing that keeps me going. That's like, you know what? I want to keep taking space in these great stages and keep filling it up with people that otherwise wouldn't get to be there. Because that's what I care about. And I think that's the thing that the world needs. That's how we can help bring people to life and make a difference. And there's a lot of other, I think it can feel fickle, but man, I buried a friend of mine at 38 just a couple months ago, and life is short and it's meant to be shared. And, when it's possible to shine light on other people that otherwise, I can go do racehorses by myself if I wanted. I would figure out a way. It's not that interesting. Far better to fill the space up with people that otherwise wouldn't be there. So
it's awesome, man. This time's been really, really cool. So if, we always want to we talked about your guys are building this Commonwealth thing. There's so much more about Chase than there's that, but that's your business. That's what you're doing. And so I'm assuming we go out here to, Google Store and, the Apple App Store. We find the app. So speak a little bit about it for 30 seconds here about the Commonwealth or Commonwealth Sports app, however we need to know what it is.
Yes, you can learn more about Commonwealth at our website, joincommonwealth.com. What Commonwealth does is we let people invest in athletes and their careers, starting at $50 a share, no ongoing expenses. And you get to come on the ride of a lifetime. We don't want people to think of this like an investment. It is risky. We've got people that invest tens of thousands of dollars. We've got people that buy a single $50 share. You never have an expense. It's a one-time buy-in, and it's an equity share. So in the racehorses, you have equity in that racehorse. You get to share in whatever their earnings are, whether that's on track or off the track. If we sell them or they go breed with an athlete, it's an income share agreement. So for instance, with our golfers, we give them a stipend basically for 3 years. So in our golfers' case, it's like $250,000, $275,000. We get 30% of their income. So for the first 3 years, we get 30%. And then year 4, we get 20. Year 5, we get 15. Year 6, we get 10%. And, it's a way like we've got a kind of VIP club so you can get more exclusive access. And we've got an app on the App Store right now. We're finishing our Android app and have a bunch of exciting features, coming to the platform this year, including what we hope to be trading. So you could actually trade shares, ahead of a big tournament or a big race. So we're excited. We're building an amazing community, and it's just a way to have fun. Whether you live in Iowa, the app makes sure that whether you can get to events or not, you don't miss any of the action.
That's awesome, man. You're giving people a piece of something I don't think they'd otherwise, you talked about, they'd otherwise be able to. So it's exciting. And that's what I thought coming in. I'm like, man, is this an investment? Is it entertainment? Is it a lifestyle? What is it? It's probably a big combination of all these things.
Yeah,
so
it is.
Enjoy life a little bit. And like you said, come along for a ride. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and it's like you said, we like to think of it like a lifestyle brand. And when they do hit, man, they can hit big. Country Grammar's returned like 1,000% to his investors, and Mage will do something similar. He's got, obviously, after the Derby, he hasn't won as much. I mean, Country Grammar's won 14 million. Mage hasn't won that much. He's won about 3, I think now, maybe 2 some. But he's got this huge stallion deal kind of waiting out there that will return a great deal of money. And you know what? The reality is you bought $50 a share in Mage. You could have been in that winner's circle with us, and he's not done yet either. We're going to go race in New Jersey in July and Saratoga in August. Like, what better reason to fly up for the weekend and join a bunch of friends and party and have fun? And, look, you can't win if you're not in the race. And that's what we're hoping to make possible.
Awesome, dude. Hey, enjoy the rest of your summer and fall in Lexington. And I'm going to follow along because I think you guys are going to do big stuff. I love your attitude and perspective, and your energy is just awesome. So who knows? Maybe I even throw $50 your guys' way or something.
Thanks, Mark. We appreciate it.
Appreciate you, man. Okay. Catch you later.
All right.